Greetings KeyForgers, I hope you are all well. A quick update before I get into the video today. In regards to my GameFound KeyForge pledge, I've still not had any notification. I don't think anyone has in the UK as of yet. But I have seen that people in America have received the pledge level that I pledged, which was the top tier. So I do know they're not really waiting on anything. They might be waiting on the 2-player starter set because I still haven't seen any video apart from the one Ghost Galaxy released about that. And yes, I'm very jealous of everyone else opening up their pledges, but hopefully we should have the ones in the UK delivered by the end of June. In the meantime, I have a few more videos that I'm going to be making. I'm still attending tournaments every 2 weeks, alternating between Sealed and Archon. Today's video is going to be an Archon review that I attended. I have a Worlds Collide 2-player starter set which I will be opening up next and going through those 2 decks. I'm hoping to get some Dark Tidings delivered in the next week or so, and it'll be nice to open some DT again on the channel. With the pledges getting fulfilled, we're looking towards retail versions of Winds of Exchange along with possibly the Unchained decks as well. As soon as they do become available for retail, I will start the Patreon back up. I've got a few ideas for what I can do for that. It will allow you to support the channel, plus be in with a chance or guarantee yourself a KeyForge deck every month. As soon as I have confirmation of my pledge, I will start a giveaway, and it will be for a 2-player starter set. We'll open it up on video and then I'll send it to whoever wins. But I'm going to put a small stipulation on that I would like to hit 100 subscribers on the channel before I do that. So if you are watching and you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button. You don't need to turn notifications on. It just lets YouTube know that my video might like to be seen by someone else. The other big news is that I emailed Ghost Galaxy to confirm the dates for KeyForge Celebration in November, and I can confirm that I will be attending. I've booked my tickets, I've got my small visa that's not a big visa, and I've booked my accommodation. So if you are going to KeyForge Celebration in November, I will be there. It will be great to meet up, play a few games, maybe we face each other in the Archon or the Alliance tournament. I still haven't decided which one I'm going to enter. Most likely the Archon. I was considering going over for one of the Vault tours that was announced, but I thought if I'm going over for the celebration. I've still got fingers crossed that there will be a Vault tour announced in the UK before the end of the year, well, at least before November, hopefully. That's all the updates from me. Let's get into the video. Here we have Valla, Considerate, Queendom Head, Mars, Shadows and Logos. So apologies for the Mars pronunciations today. We have a very nice red Archon, lots of wavy hair, lots of lightning, bottom card coming out, turning over, and we are starting with Logos. Bouncing Death Quark is an action, play, destroy an enemy creature and a friendly creature. You may repeat this effect as many times as you like, as long as it is possible to repeat the entire effect. Effervescent Principle is an action, play, each player loses half their amber, rounding down the loss, gain 1 chain. Interdimensional Graft is an action, you get an amber when you play it. Play, if an opponent forges a key on their next turn, they must give you their remaining amber. Phase Shift is an action, play, you may play 1 non-Logos card this turn. Scrambler Storm is an action, you get an amber when you play it. Play, your opponent cannot play action cards on their next turn. A second Scrambler Storm. Wild Wormhole is an action, you get an amber when you play it. Play the top card of your deck. Library of Babel is an artifact, action, draw a card. Mother, 5 power, during your draw card step, refill your hand to 1 additional card. Neutron Shark, 1 power, play, fight, reap, destroy an enemy creature or artifact, and a friendly creature or artifact. Discard the top card of your deck. If that card is not a Logos card, trigger this effect again. Novu Archaeologist, 4 power, action, archive a card from your discard pile. Valen Analyst, 2 power, each time you use an artifact, gain 1 amber. On to Mars now. Mothership Support is an action, you get an amber when you play it. Play, for each friendly, ready Mars creature, deal 2 damage to a creature. You may choose a different creature each time. Orbital Bombardment is an action, you get an amber when you play it. Play, reveal any number of Mars cards from your hand. For each card revealed this way, deal 2 damage to a creature. You may choose a different creature each time. Psychic Network is an action. Play, steal 1 amber for each friendly, ready Mars creature. Swap Widget is an artifact. Action. Return a ready, friendly Mars creature to your hand. If you do, put a Mars creature with a different name from your hand into play. Then ready it. Grab a Jammer, 4 power, 1 armor. Your opponent's keys cost +1 amber. Fight, reap, capture 1 amber. A second Grab a Jammer. Megamouth, 3 power. Fight, reap, use a friendly non-Mars creature. Think Drone, 3 power. Reap, you may archive a friendly creature or artifact from play. Dominator, 9 power, 1 armor with taunt. Dominator enters play stunned. A second Dominator. Zizix the Many, 3 power. Fight, reap, you may reveal a creature from your hand. If you do, archive it, and Zizix the Many gets 3 +1 power counters. A second Zizix the Many. And finally on to Shadows. Hidden Stash is an action you get an amber when you play it. Play, archive a card. Nerve Blast is an action. Play, steal 1 amber. If you do, deal 2 damage to a creature. Poison Wave is an action you get an amber when you play it. Play, deal 2 damage to each creature. Relentless Whisper is an action you get an amber when you play it. Play, deal 2 damage to a creature. If this damage destroys that creature, steal 1 amber. Too Much to Protect is an action. You get an amber when you play it. Play, steal all but 6 of your opponent's amber. Speed Sigil is an artifact. You get an amber when you play it. The first creature played each turn enters play ready. Diagnose Spymaster, 1 power elusive. Omni ability. Choose a friendly creature. You may use that creature this turn. Nexus, 3 power with elusive. Reap. Use an opponent's artifact as if it were yours. Silvertooth, 2 power. Silvertooth enters play ready. A second and a third Silvertooth. Umbra, 2 power with Skirmish. Fight, steal 1 amber. And there we have it. Let's take a closer look. If we start off with a breakdown, there were 18 creatures, 15 actions, 3 artifacts and no upgrades. We had a printed amber cost of 11, which isn't too bad. If we start with amber control, we've got to put these 3 at the forefront. Interdimensional Graft. Logos action, if your opponent forges a key on the next turn, they must give you their remaining amber. So if your opponent is ramping up pretty quickly, this is really good at leaving them with no amber after they forge a key. If we don't have it, what we can do is play Effervescent Principle. Another Logos action, each player loses half their amber, rounding down the loss, game 1 chain. It works really well if we play it the turn on which we forged a key, because hopefully our opponent's loss would be greater. If our opponent has ramped, maybe we don't want to play Interdimensional Graft because it might be their 3rd key. Maybe we need to play Too Much to Protect in Shadows. Play, steal all but 6 of your opponent's amber. Now we'll either have to increase our opponent's key cost or steal another amber to take them off check. But it is an amazing card. Most of the time, as I was playing in Archon, people were very aware of that card. But you can't really play around all 3. The Effervescent Principle does count against us because it does give us a chain. And it also affects both you and your opponent. The Interdimensional Graft, really good if your opponent's ramping. And Too Much to Protect just stops your opponent ramping. So whatever they were doing, these 3 cards were quite crucial in our deck. And we were able to cycle them and get them back. But I'll talk about that in a sec. We had the 2 Grabber Jammers in Mars. Opponent's keys cost +1. Fantastic passive effect. And then Fight, Reap, capture 1 amber. We had Psychic Network, which I think is an amazing action. When you play it, you steal 1 for each friendly ready Mars creature. There are 6 Mars creatures in this deck. I was usually able to pull this card off for around about 3 or 4 steal, which is still pretty good. And again, we have ways of archiving it for when we need it, and we also have ways of putting it back into our archives if it's in our discard pile. In Shadows, we had the Umbra. 2 power with Skirmish, fight, steal 1. Works very well with the Speed Sigil that we're going to look at in a second. We had Relentless Whisper, 2 damage to a creature. If that damage destroys that creature, steal 1 amber. We can play that on our creatures in a pinch. And Nerve Blast, steal 1. If we do, we have to deal 2 damage to a creature. If our opponent doesn't have any, we'll have to do it to ours. So we do have amber control in this deck. Anything that was steal can go into expected amber, especially that too much to protect and that interdimensional graft. Here's the speed sigil. Shadow's artifact, we get an amber when we play it, and it's got a passive effect of the first creature played each turn enters play ready. That is an extremely good ability, which is why it affects both you and your opponent. With the Reap and actions and omnis that we've got in this deck, I feel that it was more beneficial for me in all of my games that I played than it was for my opponent. But obviously do be wary if your opponent does have something like I played against an Ultra Gravitron. That coming in ready was a bit scary. The Spy Master in Shadows, 1 power elusive, very susceptible to getting pinged by damage enhancements, but that lovely Omni ability of choose a friendly creature, you may use that creature this turn. That's a straight out of house cheat there. We had the 3 Silvertooth, 2 power and they enter play ready. Now if you've got the Speed Sigil out, play another creature first. Otherwise you're wasting your Speed Sigil on something that's going to come in ready. I put them under expected amber because they can come in and they can reap. In Logos, Valen Analyst, 2 power. Each time you use an artifact, gain 1 amber. Now we have the Library of Babel, which was pretty good. The swap widget, I didn't use too much. And then the Megamouth in Mars, 3 power, fight Reap, use a friendly non-Mars creature. That's either a Shadows creature or a Logos creature. That's an out of house cheat there. So could be used to generate amber. We do have artifact control. We have a Nexus, and like I said, with that Speed Sigil, it's very good because you can bring it straight in, reap using an opponent's artifact as if it were yours. I did use it with a Speed Sigil on the turn I played it to activate a Gorm of Orm to blow up one of my opponent's other artifacts, which worked really well. And then we have the Neutron Shark in Logos. 1 power, play, fight, reap, destroy an enemy creature or artifact, and a friendly creature or artifact. So you have to do 1 of each. Then you discard the top card of your deck. If it is not a Logos card, trigger this effect again. If it's a Logos card, it stops. Now, bringing this down with a Speed Sigil means you can activate it twice, because then you can just reap with it. So artifact control wasn't too much of a problem. That Neutron Shark is very good for creature control as well. We had Mothership Support, 2 damage for each friendly ready Mars creature. And then we had Orbital Bombardment. Reveal any number of Mars cards from your hand. For each card revealed this way, 2 damage to a creature. And that damage can be split. So ideally you want a handful of Mars with Orbital Bombardment, and then the next turn you play Mothership Support, hopefully with a Psychic Network, so you can deal damage, steal amber. In Shadows, we had the Poison Wave. We also had the Nerve Blast. This one is just 2 damage to each creature. That will kill some of our creatures, so just be careful. And then we had Bouncing Deathquark. Destroy an enemy creature and a friendly creature, and we can repeat it as long as we can destroy one of ours and one of theirs. So technically could be a board wipe depending on the creatures we have out. Kind of does what our Neutron Shark does, but it doesn't do artifacts. And we don't have to draw to see if it keeps going. There were no what we would call board wipes, but that's as close as we could get to it in this deck. There was quite a bit of efficiency in this deck. So in Shadows, we had the Hidden Stash to archive a card. Very good for squirreling away something like a Psychic Network, Neutron Shark, too much to protect. So it didn't clog up your hand, so you didn't really have to hold it until you needed it. We had the 2 Zizix the Many. Fight Reap, reveal a creature from your hand. We can archive it. Again, building up those Mars creatures. But possibly, if we've got a Zizix in hand, we wouldn't archive a Mars creature. Maybe the Neutron Shark. And then Zizix gets 3 +1 power counters. In Logos, we had the Phase Shift. You may play 1 non-Logos card this turn. That's a cheat, house cheat. We had Mother with a passive effect to draw an additional card during our draw card step. We had the Library of Babel, which works very well with Analyst. So we'd action draw a card and then gain 1 if the Analyst was on the board. And then we had Wild Wormhole. Action, and when you play play the top card of your deck. I did fish once for an effervescent principle and managed to pull it at the right time. There's not much that you wouldn't want to hit. That poison wave might come at a wrong time. Neutron shark. There's nothing that's really going to devastate your board. You really don't want a wild wormhole into a TMTP or an EP, so effervescent principle or too much to protect, if you don't need it, because then you have to wait for it to cycle around again. There was recursion in the form of our Novu Archaeologist, which again with a speed sigil means we can play it and then action it straight away to archive a card from our discard pile, usually getting back the Psychic Network, the Neutron Shark, the Too Much to Protect, or the Effervescent Principle. And then in Disruption, it was Logos to Scrambler Storm. Action, and when you play it, your opponent cannot play actions on their next turn. That's a nasty effect, especially if your opponent doesn't have a board. They can play creatures. We can deal with creatures pretty well. Some of the high armoured ones we did struggle with, but stopping your opponent from playing actions, very, very annoying. There were some cards that didn't really fit into those categories, mainly in Mars. We had the 2 Dominators. They enter play stun, but they do have Taunt, so we can hide things behind them, like our Grabber Jammers or our Neutron Shark. We had the Think Drone. You may archive a friendly creature or artifact from play. Play effects here, they're not too bad, but if you've got an action or a Reap or an Omni ability, sometimes we can Reap to put that in our archives because we know we've got the Speed Sigil and we can use it again, but sort of think, why would you take it off the board? Only if something had a really good playability would you do that. And then the Swap Widget, which allowed us to swap a friendly ready Mars creature with one of a different name in our hand, which does mean that we'll be able to play that creature we return to our hand, but we get to put a Mars creature into play ready. Could be our second creature if we have that Speed Sigil in play as well. There were 10 of us in this tournament or this event, and we played 4 games. I won the first game, my opponent did not forge a key. I won the second game, my opponent forged 1 key on the turn before I won. My third game was against a DT deck, a Dark Tidings deck. Now that was the first Dark Tidings deck I'd faced that night, and it was a very back and forth game. It was quite drawn out. It did go to time, and I did lose on a tie break. I was always on the back foot. My opponent was very aware of Too Much to Protect. I kept trying to have to cycle or archive the Effervescent Principle. I think if the game would have gone on any longer, and my opponent did agree that I would have eventually won, but DT decks, you tend to get really long games, and this was quite a rampy deck, and it didn't work out too well. So this deck did not perform well against DT. I think the first deck was a Kota, the same as this one. Second one was a Mass Mutation. And then in my 4th round, I played another Kota, I believe. So it works quite well. It's kind of got that Kota rush in there, especially with that Amber control, and that TMTP can be huge, that interdimensional graft. You can pull off some really good shenanigans with that Speed Sigil. Just be very, very careful because your opponent gets to access that as well. If you're interested in the SAS, it came out to 84. It was 68 base with 14 synergy, 1 anti-synergy. I like playing it a lot. It is going to be permanently sleeved in my collection. Will I be taking it to KeyForge Celebration? I don't know. I think I have better decks, but we will see. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to take it for a run on the Crucible. Apart from that, all that remains for me to say is good luck, have fun, keep forging.